Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Build Amazing Things, now on season 2. Can you believe it? Today we are honoured. Let's use some hyperbole. It's early in the day. We are honoured. We are thrilled to have a special guest with us. That guest is Evan. Evan is joining us. He has had an amazing career, but you know the rules, team. I do not ask people for their bio and read it out to punish you. I'm not that kind of person. But I am going to ask Evan Johnson, who are you, the human?
Thanks for having me. Also honored to be a guest on your show. So I'm Evan Johnson. I'll work my way backwards. I'm the co-founder and CEO of RunReveal, which is the simplest security data platform. It's a new company, only a couple of months old. Prior to that, I was leading product security at Cloudflare, where I was leading product security for probably the last 4.5, close to 5 years. And I did before that, kind of interspersed with, by Cloudflare. I worked at Cloudflare from 2015 to 2017, went to Segment, and then came back to Cloudflare where I led product security. But I was the first security engineer at Cloudflare and Segment. Was a software engineer at LastPass long ago. Great, had a lot of fun there despite their kind of crummy security record now. Really great people that I worked with, and then builder at heart, and all things security at Cloudflare, where I was responsible for application security, all of the products we shipped, a lot of the security features that we built, enterprise security, all sorts of stuff.
So, Evan, I have to ask, because I tend to ask, particularly those folks who come and they're like, I worked on like a million famous things you've heard of. I do like to ask, just to ground us all and make us all feel a little bit better in our day. What's the worst job you've ever had? What was your first job? Where did you start out?
My worst job. So the very first thing I ever did that I got paid for regularly was I would go pick up golf balls at a range.
Lovely.
Except, I had to do it by hand. I didn't drive around a cart and with some machine that sucked them all up. I had to actually individually pick up every golf ball.
I love this. And thank you for indulging the question. I think one of the things that we lose track of when we're all talking about our illustrious careers is that we all start somewhere, and most of those places we start are nothing to do with where we are now and are deeply unglamorous. But Evan, it would be a waste of a chat if we didn't talk about your experience. But I want to kind of put a very specific lens on it, because at Build Amazing Things Securely, we're really interested in, the amazing technology that's being built and how we do security in it. You've been literally at the very, very big end of town, head of product security for a company that, a lot of the internet is using in some way or the other, even though most people don't realize it's there and doing its job, right the way down to now in your own thing, doing security for your own tiny fledgling company. And that's quite a transition. So, let's unpick this a bit. You were, head of product security at Cloudflare. That's pretty cool. What does that really mean though? Like, if we were going to talk about how big a team and what kind of things you're working on, what's the day in the life of a head of product in a company that's quite that big?
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of meetings. So at the end of when I left Cloudflare in December of this past year, 22, I was managing a team of about 15, and that was broken into 3 teams: AppSec, which was led by a director of application security, enterprise security, which was led by a director of enterprise security, and then we had a senior manager who was leading tooling and automation and a lot of the tools that we were building on our own security team for vulnerability management, for monitoring our posture, a bunch of stuff. And most of my day by the end was meetings and dealing with whatever was happening or whatever the crisis of the week was. So when Log4j came out, we spent a few weeks on that. When we were going to release a new product, I would get involved and kind of make sure that everything looked really, really good if it was a major new product like an R2 or a Cloudflare Workers or something. But really what I was doing was spending a lot of my time with the people on my team, coaching them and making sure that they felt empowered to make security decisions and speak up about the things that looked right or wrong, or all sorts of stuff like that. And when it's funny, at the big scale of Cloudflare, you talk about it being a really big scale and being from the outside, it feels like a giant company. But on the inside, it actually feels really small when you're in the engineering team or working with the people in the ETI organization, which is the folks working on the newer products. And you get to know everybody really, really well. And there's like a passion for releasing products and building things. And it's so much fun. And, I used to say on our security team that our job was, when we were releasing something new, just to make sure that the one or two things that couldn't be wrong were that we couldn't fix after the fact were right. Because a new product, sometimes you're doing something that bends a specification or is something that nobody's ever done, and you can't just go read an RFC on like how to build R2 or Cloudflare Workers or whatever. And I would just ask the people on my team, what's the one thing that we can't mess up on this? Oh, yeah.
I love that as a rule. I feel like that's a really good guiding question for most teams, whether you're in security or not, is, what's the thing I can't come back from? What's the thing I really can't mess up? It's a really great priority mechanism.
I found that a lot of the engineers had no problem answering that, and it makes security way more approachable to people who may not have a strong security background, but they're experts in their own domain, because everybody building their product knows that the worst possible thing would be, I can see your data, or it depends on what you're building, but it's usually pretty clear to security engineer and software engineer alike.
And do you know what I find interesting? I live in New Zealand, so like everything is little here and very far away. But when we see big, particularly American brands, and you see the Cloudflares, and to us they really do seem giant from the outside, because that's the scale of the brand that we see. And when you say that there were 15 people, like that, like my brain doesn't wrap around the fact that there are 15 people that in the security space in something that is so fundamental, so pivotal. And I think that's something that perhaps we all as a community overestimate, is how many people that are, they're protecting such amazing teams. If that was the security team size, Evan, how big was the wider engineering space?
So the security org itself, I wasn't leading all of security. I wasn't the CISO. There's a few different orgs. There was one dedicated detection response, GRC, strategic planning, and programs. And then I feel bad. There's somebody I'm forgetting right now. Oh, infrastructure security, who the leader of that lives here in Austin. So I don't feel quite as bad that they're right down the road. But so the whole security org was about 75 around that. So it wasn't.
And how many were in product engineering? So if we looked at product security being related to those folks out building the Cloudflare product, how many engineers were, just in the engineering team? I say just like it's just a tiny thing, but you know what I mean. They weren't specially there to do security.
That's a good question. I wouldn't know. Definitely. I wouldn't know. It's a lot.
A lot. Yeah. So it wasn't just 6 and, there were 15 of you and you just sort of surround them in a big cuddle. I think the more we talk about and we share about the scaling and what it means and how these teams interact, the more we all understand about what is normal and what is going on. Because I think a lot is speculation at the moment. A lot is hearsay. Oh, they must have this, or I assume that they're doing that. Okay, so you're at the big end of town. You've got 15 people in product security. You're rocking it. Fabulous. And so you decide to do what all sane people do and go and do your own teeny tiny high risk company. So congratulations. That's a life choice. So, now you're at the other end of town. How big is RunReveal now in terms of whole company size?
Yeah, we're 3.
Fabulous. Good. I love a good, transformation story. I feel like we had a Cinderella moment there. Right. Okay. So we've got 3 people now, but we're building something cool. So talk me through what the cool technologies we're building, and then we'll dig into how on earth it works when you've gone from that huge scale to this teeny tiny scale.
Yeah. So I'll start with the problem that we're trying to solve. At Cloudflare, we had a lot of challenges just because of scale and because of you have to talk to a bunch of people, and then the vendors are super evil and expensive that exist in this space. Just collecting all of our security logs in one place and making use of them to build detections, to do investigations, to figure out what happened in our environment, to draw pretty dashboards, you name it. It gets hard once you reach a certain scale. And then the price for the vendors who exist in that space are so astronomically expensive that they kind of price out smaller companies completely. So kind of everybody universally dislikes how things are in this space. And we started RunReveal to fix that. My co-founder is hardcore data engineer from Segment and Cloudflare. He spent the last 6 or 7 years at Segment, and then in 2014 through 16, he was at Cloudflare with me, and that's where we met. Really, we just started with that problem, and then we picked a architecture that we felt could scale basically to be huge, to support customers of any size, any number of customers. We worked on that for a long time, the basics of how do we ingest data and write it to a database and make that database scalable and searchable in a cost-efficient way, so that we could, tiny companies could use us, giant companies could use us, and we could just be a friendly kind of brand in the space. And we started with that goal in mind, and we've just iterated constantly, building things, shipping them, ripping them out when they don't work, doubling down when they do work. And it's just been a lot of fun the last 5 or 6 months.
I have some deeply nerdy questions I have to ask about, architectures here, because, I can't resist an architecture chat. But I have to ask, and I'm going to actually, I will say it for the public record. I love that you said that, you're going to be a good, friendly company, against, and your words, not mine, that some of the other vendors in the space are a little bit evil. But we don't judge nor name, because that's how you get to lawsuits. So, you heard it here first, folk. This is on, in New Zealand time, the 2nd of August, 2023, RunReveal have declared they are not going to be evil. So we have to hold them accountable now. But let's get back to the tech. Let's get back to the tech. So, you just happened to meet 2 friends who happen to be deeply nerdy and work at places that had been ingesting large quantities of data and design and architecture that could scale from the teeny tiny company to the big companies. Now, that's quite unusual when you're building a product. A lot of folks will say, hey, focus, go after one market, and I guess in your space, probably enterprise, and, just build for them. Why have you chosen architecture that can go from one extreme to the other? And secondary question, the more nerdy one, what are the considerations you had to put into that? What have you built this thing from?
Yeah. So I'll start with what we built it on. A lot of ClickHouse, a lot of WebAssembly, and so really fancy, fun tech. ClickHouse is an awesome database that scales kind of forever. We used it at Cloudflare. At Segment, they were using it as well. And it's a fantastic database. It can be a little temperamental, but it's just so fast and scales really, really well. And then a lot of WebAssembly for writing, stream processing, and alerting on the data that's going through us. So, and we did this, both of those were chosen to be something that could change easily. So with WebAssembly, we wanted to be able to let customers write their own code. And if we then made a kind of sandbox to safely run Python or whatever language we wanted to support. Everything was going to be so specific to the language runtime that WebAssembly just made a lot of sense, where we're letting customers write Python right now, but we run it within a WebAssembly sandbox. And then we're using WA0 under the hood, the pure Go WebAssembly runtime. And then for ClickHouse, we wanted something that at the very, very ultra low end was something that we could do tenancy. So we could have multiple customers using the same ClickHouse cluster, and each one with a separate role, so they don't see each other's data. And at the high end was still really where they're going to have their own single tenant kind of thing. At the very high end, it's going to be super fast. It's going to be a performant enterprise experience. And so we kind of picked the technology based on what we wanted the product to be, and with the belief that once you set the architecture, you can't fix it later. It's the same thing about the security. The two things per product that we look at when we were at Cloudflare. What are the two things we can't change later? And it's going to be where the data is stored, and like if we let somebody run who knows what language in our data pipeline for stream processing, then we have to let them run it for forever. And it's just so impossible to undo those decisions.
I feel like when you're starting a company, there's like several challenges that you always underestimate. Naming your company is always horrible. And also, you know, choosing where your data is going to live forever. So yeah, well, this is really interesting to me, and I'm sure it's interesting to our audience listening in. It's always cool to listen to the why of you know, why did you pick your stack? A lot of places, you know, I built in a language I happen to know, but you're making very intentional choices here. Now, the bit that you weren't explicit about, but I'd love to ask about, and there's no judgment here, you know, I'd love, you know, what the honest answer is. With just three of you, where did security fit into your decision with the technologies and the architecture you chose? Was it something that was conscious and explicit, or was it something that you're just relying on the intrinsic properties of the technologies you've got there?
Yeah, we kind of did our own little bit of testing here and there, but security was very important to us. So one of the reasons we selected WA0, for example, is because it doesn't have, it's a pure Go kind of a very, very minimal dependency implementation of a WebAssembly runtime. And then ClickHouse, we tested the roles ourselves. So we figured, can we bust out of this? I know that we have a role, and we're querying the data with my role, but is there anything I could do to try to do something else? And we definitely tested our theories to make sure that they were a reality, and we didn't sink tons of money into really proprietary research and all of that stuff that we could do. Yeah, it definitely was a big part of our decision making. And then also, security wise, we made the decision to be all security key only at our company really early. So WebAuthn only. We have pretty good practices around our architecture and the way we provision it and the way we manage it. We've got like an access broker using Tailscale to get into our environment. So I would say that we run a pretty tight ship just by virtue of being security conscious people.
Yeah, you've got three very experienced people who have had to live this before. So that's, you know, a starting point that many companies don't get. Now, I'm expecting, like to quote John Gelsey from our previous episode last season, he said, you should plan on being wildly successful, and I'm sure that RunReveal will be. So as you grow, how is this going to work? How do you think security is going to scale with you as a, you know, a 3-person organization? How much of a role is security going to play as you start to grow and as you start to go after that market share?
Oh, yeah. Security for a security company is always a big deal. kind of coming back from getting hacked and security incidents and issues that's a situation I don't want to be leading a company through.
No, I don't think any of us would want that.
Right. And so we really want to focus on the kind of foundational stuff, not to overcomplicate security. So we have security keys now. I mentioned Tailscale as well. So we've kind of made a lot of these decisions and done a little bit of groundwork so that those are things that can be core pieces of the engineering stack later on. So I hope we're using Tailscale for a long time because it is a great product and enforces like automatic offboarding from our machines out there. A lot of good properties. And so, every little bit of effort you put in early on to a really scalable solution for your security that you can keep around is really effort that's not wasted, because you get to keep that through the entire life cycle of the company. As the company's really big and mature, we'll still have security keys, and we won't have to do this big project and this whole 100-person effort to try to roll them out, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to go back a little bit to something you said about your particular audience. And I think it's really interesting. And this is a challenge space that not many companies have to try and tackle. And that's that you are talking about being able to serve the little companies and the huge ones at the same time. Now, as we know from, previous chats we've had on this show, and you'll know very well, Evan, that a smaller organization has different requirements and expectations than a larger one. How much time do you spend on each of these groups? Is there a difference between how you treat the larger and the smaller? It might be too early days for you, but I just kind of want to see how you as an organization are thinking about security when it comes to such vastly different operating behaviors from your customers.
Yeah, we had really good role models when I was at Cloudflare in the executive team at Cloudflare, where for better or worse, if you tweet at one of those executives issues that you're having with the Cloudflare product, they will respond and they will try to fix it. Awesome. That can be really, really beneficial, but it can be distracting if you're an employee of the company and you have the CTO suddenly asking you, why doesn't this thing work? Somebody's asking me on Twitter. So right now we're treating everybody the same. We're doing this thing that's probably not going to scale, where we want to make everybody successful with our product, and we would just want to make the best product. And that just means everybody to me, everybody who uses our product right now is an enterprise customer in my mind. But the reality is not everybody's going to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think that's something definitely we're seeing a lot of commentary about at the moment, is where companies choose to place a cost on security versus just embedding it in everything, and what you can provide as your base foundation for free versus what you have to then be compensated for just because of the complexity of it later. So we're here today. It's the 2nd of August. What does this look like as a tech company? So not necessarily, the big venture capitalist spiel, but as an engineer, as someone who's building something cool, where is this technology going to be in 5 years?
Yeah, WebAssembly, I think, will be very common. We're kind of at this point where we don't really know what the future of WebAssembly is going to be, and there's been a little hype around it. But if you buy in, then you can kind of see that it could be really useful to embed programmability into a bunch of existing kind of things. So imagine WebAssembly on the network, or WebAssembly to program your firewall or something. It kind of seems like an interesting solution for embedding safely your untrusted code. Now, whether that becomes true or not, that's kind of the same promise that virtual machines made. And now we're seeing all of these issues with virtual machines. So just one last week with the AMD issue that was published by Tavis Ormandy. So you don't really know how the future will go, but it does seem promising for WebAssembly that it could add this layer of programmability to things that we already have. And then for ClickHouse, I kind of think that ClickHouse, while it's been around for quite a few years, it still hasn't had its heyday. It's a really, really incredible database. It is so fast. And I think that as more people figure that out, it will be more common to be seen outside of these elite engineering orgs where they can throw a bunch of people at the problem and run ClickHouse. I think if I had to compare it to something, I might compare it to and I'm not a data expert in any regard, but I might compare it to Kafka, where operating it is kind of complex and you could hurt yourself, but it is very, very powerful in what it does.
All I'm hearing is that people are going to get deeply nerdy about a new technology again. I love Kafka, folks. You're all good humans. But my goodness, you are a very, very specific bunch of humans. Okay, cool. And what about RunReveal? So you're taking on logging. You know, we've all tried to set up logging systems. We've all seen the pricing. We all know where this ends up. So what's the vision? Where will logging be in 5 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But with RunReveal, there's a lot of different ways we can take it. We could, what I hope is that the cost efficiency is, with ClickHouse, makes a very, very performant experience that you can't get anywhere. So it'll be cheaper, more performant, and massively level up the amount you can ingest. And so I hope that we can cut everybody's bills in half for the same amount of data, and that would be great because we would still make money, and our customers would be happier because they can query their logs and not wait around, and that'd be great. But then there's also this idea that I've thought about, which is you see a lot of these logging platforms and how much they cost, and I won't name names, but it's especially been in the news over the last few months. And what if we could help take your data and put it in your own kind of ClickHouse cluster or something that runs all of your metrics or your logs and stores it all. And you can just manage the ingesting and putting the data, keeping it clean, searching, visualization, all that stuff. And then you end up actually owning the cluster. And I think that seems really cool from a data sovereignty perspective and also from a cost perspective. And I think that that'd be really interesting if we can do that.
I think it's an interesting space technology. You know, I think we're all getting old enough to see things come and go. And I think where the cloud has been transformational and shared services and SaaS products have been transformational in getting us up and doing and being able to focus on our core job and what we want to do in the world. The issues like data sovereignty, especially in the age of AI, seem to be encouraging us to remember some of our old school ways of doing it and why we did it. I think it's going to be, logging will be a very, very important space in that, no doubt. Right, our time has drawn to a close, Evan. It has been fun. I love that you were able to share your journey from the very big end of town to the much, much tinier. And I'm really excited to see the idea that logging and the processing of logs will be available fast to all companies, not just those with the deepest pockets. And as a security person, that can only be a good thing, because the more logs we have, as you'll remember from our episode with our forensics specialist, Shanna, the more logs we have and the more data we have available, then the better decisions we can make when things go wrong. So fantastic. Thank you for joining us today, Evan.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Now, you know the drill, team. Please do like, subscribe, follow along. And also check out our sister project, 1 Hour AppSec, where we are working with teeny tiny teams through to much bigger teams all around the world and providing 1 hour worth of instructions to do some AppSec in your world every sprint. So just 1 hour a sprint can get you doing some AppSec, even if you don't have the resources and people to have a specialist team leading it. Okay, we will catch you again soon. Take care.